The silence that followed was the kind that makes your skin crawl. Not peaceful quiet, but the eerie, unnatural stillness that comes after a battlefield. 3 cribs sat empty, in the most expensive nursery money could buy, their occupants nowhere to be seen. The crystal chandelier above cast dancing shadows across walls, painted in soft pastels. And somewhere in the distance, a woman was sobbing into her phone. "I can't do this anymore," she choked out, her British accent thick with exhaustion. "They're not normal babies. They're something else entirely." Nanny number 17 had just walked out of the Blackwood penthouse, leaving behind 3 8-month-old triplets who had turned the art of being impossible into a science. These weren't ordinary babies. Mason, Riley, and Sage Blackwood had achieved something no infants should be capable of. They had broken the will of every childcare professional on the East Coast. But what happened next would change everything. Because sometimes the most extraordinary solutions come from the most ordinary places. And Marcus Chen, a 28-year-old single father working the graveyard shift as a building custodian, was about to discover that his own broken heart might be exactly what these babies needed. If you're already hooked and want to see how this impossible situation unfolds, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The Blackwood Industries Tower pierced the Manhattan skyline like a glass and steel monument to ambition. 57 floors of corporate power, each level representing another step in Victoria Blackwood's climb from bankruptcy to billionaire status. At 34, she had built an empire from the ashes of her father's failed construction company, turning Blackwood Industries into one of the most successful luxury real estate development firms in the world. But tonight, as she stood in her corner office at 2 a.m, staring out at the city that never slept, Victoria felt like she was drowning. The call had come 20 minutes ago. Another nanny quitting, the 17th, in 8 months. Each one had arrived with stellar credentials, glowing references, and unshakable confidence. Each one had left broken, defeated, whispering stories that sounded more like urban legends than childcare reports. "They don't sleep," Nanny, number 12, had whispered before fleeing. "Not really. They take turns watching you. It's like they planned it," Nanny, number 14, had muttered, clutching her resignation letter. "Every time I thought I had them figured out, they changed tactics. 8-month-old babies don't strategize." But Mason, Riley, and Sage Blackwood weren't ordinary babies. Victoria pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her breath fogging the window. Below, the city hummed with life. People heading home from late shifts, early commuters beginning the day, the eternal rhythm of a metropolis that never paused. She envied them their simple problems, their normal lives. Her reflection stared back at her. A woman who looked successful by every measure, but felt like a complete failure in the only thing that truly mattered. Perfectly styled blonde hair that cost more than most people's monthly salary. A designer suit that fit like armor. Eyes that could command a boardroom, but couldn't figure out how to comfort her own children. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could negotiate billion-dollar deals with foreign investors, but she couldn't negotiate bedtime with 3 babies. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Eleanor Whitmore, the most exclusive childcare agency in the city. "Mrs. Blackwood, we've exhausted our available candidates. The triplets' reputation has preceded them. We may need to explore alternative options." Alternative options? Victoria almost laughed, but it came out as more of a choke. What alternatives? She had tried everything. The most expensive nannies, child psychologists who specialized in difficult infants, even a sleep consultant who charged $5,000 to tell her that some babies were just uniquely challenging. The truth was simpler and more devastating. Her children didn't want her. It had started the moment she returned to work. The triplets had been model babies for their first 4 months, sleeping through the night, eating well, hitting every developmental milestone. Victoria had foolishly thought she had it figured out. She hired the best nanny money could buy, returned to her demanding schedule, and expected her perfectly ordered life to continue perfectly. That's when everything fell apart. The babies stopped sleeping. They stopped eating properly. They cried in shifts, ensuring that someone was always awake, always screaming. They seemed to sense every nanny's breaking point with uncanny precision, escalating their behavior just enough to push each caregiver over the edge. "They miss you, her mother had said during one of their increasingly rare phone calls. Babies need their mothers. But Victoria had tried that. She had taken 3 weeks off, staying home every day. And the babies had been perfect. Sleeping, laughing, playing. The moment she left for a board meeting, the chaos resumed. It was like they were testing her, forcing her to choose between her company and her children, between the empire she had built and the family she had created. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts, landing on the number she had been avoiding. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the pediatric psychiatrist who had evaluated the triplets last month. "There's nothing wrong with them medically," Dr. Martinez had explained during their consultation. "They're healthy, intelligent babies, but they've learned to use their behavior as communication. They're telling you something, Victoria. The question is whether you're ready to listen." Victoria hadn't been ready then. She had been too busy, too focused on a major acquisition that required her complete attention. But now, staring at her reflection in the window, she wondered if she had any choice left. Her phone rang, jarring her from her thoughts. The caller ID showed home. "Ma'am?" The voice belonged to Mrs. Henderson, the overnight housekeeper, who had volunteered to watch the babies until Victoria could figure out her next move. "I'm sorry to bother you." But a chorus of wailing erupted in the background, so loud and persistent that Victoria had to hold the phone away from her ear. "They won't stop, Mrs." Henderson continued, her voice strained. "I've tried everything. Feeding, changing, rocking, singing. They keep looking at the door, like they're waiting for someone." Victoria closed her eyes. "I'll be right there." She gathered her things and headed for the elevator, her heels clicking against the marble floor with sharp, staccato beats. The ride down seemed to take forever, each floor marking another step toward a problem she couldn't solve, with money or influence or sheer force of will. The penthouse was 40 minutes away by car, but Victoria's driver had gone home hours ago. She would have to take a taxi, which meant trusting a stranger with her location and vulnerability. Under normal circumstances, she would have called her security team, but nothing about this situation was normal. As she stepped onto the street and raised her hand for a cab, Victoria caught her reflection again in a storefront window. For the first time in years, she looked exactly like what she was. A mother who had no idea how to save her children. The taxi ride through Manhattan's early morning darkness gave her too much time to think. The city looked different at this hour, softer somehow, less demanding. Street lamps created pools of warm light, and the few people she saw moving through the shadows looked purposeful rather than frantic. When had she stopped noticing these details? When had her world shrunk to boardrooms and conference calls and quarterly projections? The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and calloused hands, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Long night?" Victoria managed a small smile. "Something like that." "Kids?" She looked at him sharply. "How did you know?" He chuckled. "I've got 4 of my own. Recognize that particular brand of exhaustion. They got you up all night?" Something like that, Victoria repeated, though it wasn't entirely accurate. The babies didn't keep her up, she kept herself up, working late, trying to solve business problems instead of facing the personal ones waiting at home. How old? 8 months. Triplets. The driver whistled low. Triplets! That's no joke. My wife's sister had twins, and they nearly drove her crazy the first year. Can't imagine 3. They're challenging. They all are at that age, testing boundaries, figuring out the world. But they come around. Takes patience, though. And time. Lots of time. Time. The one thing Victoria had convinced herself she couldn't afford to give. The cab pulled up to her building, a converted warehouse in Tribeca that had been transformed into luxury condominiums. The doorman, recognizing her even at this unusual hour, nodded respectfully as she passed through the lobby. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt like ascending toward a battlefield. She could hear the crying before the doors even opened, a sound that seemed to echo through the walls themselves. Mrs. Henderson met her at the door, her gray hair disheveled, and her usually pristine uniform wrinkled. Behind her, the sound of 3 babies crying in perfect, devastating harmony filled the air. Oh, Mrs. Blackwood, thank goodness. I don't know what else to do. They've been like this for 2 hours straight. Victoria walked into the main living area and saw them 3 perfect little people, each in their own bouncer, each contributing to a symphony of misery that would have impressed professional orchestras with its coordination. Mason, her oldest by 12 minutes, had inherited her stubborn streak and his late father's dark hair. At 8 months, he could already pull himself up to standing and had developed an uncanny ability to escape from any restraint system designed for babies. Riley, the middle child, was her gentle soul, or had been before whatever was happening started happening. She had Victoria's blonde hair and the kind of smile that could melt hearts when she chose to use it. Lately, she chose not to. And Sage, her youngest and most mysterious, seemed to understand everything that happened around him with an intelligence that sometimes unsettled even Victoria. He rarely cried without reason, which made his current participation in the chaos all the more concerning. "When did this start tonight?" Victoria asked, approaching the babies cautiously. "About midnight, right after you called. It's like they knew you were coming home." Victoria knelt beside Mason's bouncer. The moment he saw her, his crying intensified, his little arms reaching toward her with desperate urgency. She picked him up, and he immediately quieted, but only for a moment. As soon as he seemed to realize she was still in her work clothes, still carrying the scent of the office, he resumed crying with renewed vigor. "They want you," Mrs. Henderson said softly, "but they want all of you. Not just the part you give them between meetings." Victoria looked at the housekeeper sharply. It wasn't like Mrs. Henderson to offer unsolicited advice. But the older woman had been with the family since the babies were born. She had seen everything. "I'm doing the best I can," Victoria said, though the words felt hollow even to her. "I know you are, dear. But sometimes our best isn't what they need. Sometimes they need something different entirely." Before Victoria could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Heavy, measured, steps that didn't belong to any of her usual staff. "Ma'am?" A man's voice, unfamiliar but calm. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help hearing. Is everything all right?" Victoria turned toward the voice, still holding Mason, who had quieted slightly at the sound of this new person. A man stood in her doorway, tall, with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple custodial uniform with Blackwood Industries embroidered on the chest. He looked tired but alert, concerned but not intrusive. "Who are you?" Victoria asked, instinctively stepping back. "How did you get in here?" "Marcus Chen," he said, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. I'm part of the overnight cleaning crew for the building. Mrs. Henderson let me in. I was working on your floor when I heard." He gestured toward the babies, two of whom were still crying. "I have experience with children. I thought maybe I could help." Victoria's first instinct was to refuse. The idea of letting a stranger, a custodian, into her personal crisis felt like admitting defeat on multiple levels. But as she looked at him, really looked at him, she saw something that had been absent from every nanny who had walked through her door. He wasn't looking at her with judgment or pity, or the desperate eagerness of someone trying to impress a billionaire. He was looking at her babies with genuine concern, the way someone looks at children who need help rather than problems to be solved. "Experience with children?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "I have a 2-year-old daughter, Lily. I've been raising her alone since she was 6 months old." Something in his voice, in the way he said his daughter's name, made Victoria pause. There was love there, yes, but also exhaustion and worry, and the weight of responsibility she recognized all too well. "I don't usually," she began, then stopped. What was she going to say? That she didn't usually let strangers near her children? She had let 17 strangers care for them in the past 8 months. Marcus took a small step forward, his movements careful and non-threatening. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward Riley, who was still crying in her bouncer. Against every instinct she had about safety and propriety and maintaining boundaries, Victoria nodded. Marcus approached slowly, murmuring something under his breath not to her, but to Riley herself. When he knelt beside the bouncer, his movements were fluid, natural, like someone who had done this countless times before. "Hey there, beautiful," he said softly to Riley, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to cut through the chaos. "You're having a tough night, aren't you?" Riley's crying began to subside, her large blue eyes focusing on this new face with curiosity rather than distress. Marcus didn't immediately pick her up. Instead, he simply stayed at her level, letting her study him, his presence calm and undemanding. "She's beautiful," he said to Victoria, though his attention remained on Riley. "They all are." "How long have they been like this?" "Months," Victoria admitted, the word coming out more broken than she intended. "Ever since I went back to work. Every nanny I hire, they break them down. Somehow, I don't understand it." Marcus nodded as if this made perfect sense to him. They're testing boundaries, trying to figure out who stays and who leaves. 8 months old is right when they start understanding object permanence, that people can go away and not come back. He reached out slowly, letting Riley grab his finger. Her crying stopped entirely. "But you came back," he continued, still focused on Riley but clearly speaking to Victoria. "Every night you come back. They know that. They're not trying to get rid of you. They're trying to make sure you don't get rid of them." Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. "But the nannies are temporary," Marcus said simply. "They know that too. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for, especially when it comes to reading people." As if to prove his point, Sage's crying had also diminished to soft hiccups, his attention captured by this stranger who spoke to them like real people rather than problems to be managed. "Would you like me to try something?" Marcus asked, looking up at Victoria for the first time since approaching the babies. Victoria found herself nodding, though she wasn't entirely sure why. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the way Riley was now smiling, actually smiling, at this man she had just met. Or maybe it was the simple fact that for the first time in months, someone had walked into her crisis and offered help without judgment. Marcus stood and moved to the center of the room, where he could see all 3 babies clearly. Then he began to hum, not a lullaby, exactly, but something low and rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. The change was immediate and startling. All three babies turned toward him, their crying replaced by rapt attention. He moved closer to Sage's bouncer, still humming, his movements slow and deliberate. "The thing about babies," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "is that they don't want perfection. They want presence. They want to know someone is really there with them, not just going through the motions." He picked up Sage, who immediately settled against his shoulder, as if he had known Marcus his entire short life. "How are you doing that?" Victoria breathed. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the chaos began, the room felt peaceful. "I'm not doing anything special. I'm just here. Really here. Not thinking about work, or schedules, or what comes next. Just here, right now, with them." He looked at Victoria, and she saw something in his eyes that made her chest tight, not pity, but understanding. "When's the last time you were able to do that? Just be present with them, without the weight of everything else?" Victoria opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She couldn't remember. Even when she was home, her mind was always somewhere else, on deals, on deadlines, on the 1,000 details that kept her empire running. "That's what they're asking for," Marcus continued, now swaying gently with Sage, who was beginning to drift toward sleep. "Not a perfect mother. Not someone who has all the answers. Just someone who chooses them. In the moment. Completely." And there it was, the truth she had been running from for months. Her babies didn't need her to be perfect. They needed her to be present. They needed her to choose them over her company. Her family over her empire. At least sometimes. "But how?" she whispered. "How do I run a business and be present for them?" Marcus looked at her with such compassion that she almost started crying herself. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know you can't keep running from the question. They're going to keep forcing you to face it until you find an answer." As if to prove his point, Mason had stopped crying entirely, and was now watching the interaction between Marcus and Sage with fascination. Riley was playing contentedly with her toys. The storm that had raged for hours completely dissipated. The room was quiet, except for Marcus's gentle humming and the soft sounds of babies doing what babies should do. Exploring, learning, existing in the moment without the weight of past or future. For the first time in months, Victoria's penthouse felt like a home. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That Marcus Chen, the custodian who worked nights and raised a daughter alone, was about to change everything about the carefully constructed life she thought she wanted. She just didn't know yet if she was ready for that change. The clock on the wall read 3:47 in the morning. In a few hours, she had a board meeting that would determine the future of a $50 million project. Tomorrow night, there would be another crisis, another test of her ability to balance the impossible demands of motherhood and success. But right now, in this moment, her babies were peaceful, and for the first time since they were born, she wondered if that might be enough to build on. Marcus continued to hum, Sage sleeping soundly against his shoulder, and Victoria found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, the solution to her impossible situation had just walked through her door, wearing a custodian's uniform and carrying wisdom she had been too proud to seek. The question was whether she was brave enough to listen. The next morning arrived with the cruel efficiency of Manhattan sunrise, painting Victoria's penthouse in shades of gold that seemed to mock her exhaustion. She had managed exactly 47 minutes of sleep after Marcus left, her mind replaying the impossible scene of her babies, her impossible babies settling into peaceful slumber at the touch of a stranger. Victoria stood at her kitchen island, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. when her phone exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from her assistant, 12 urgent emails marked board meeting prep, and one text message that made her stomach clench. Emergency board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Investors are asking questions about your recent absences. Amanda, recent absences. Victoria almost laughed. She had missed exactly 3 meetings in 8 months, each time because of a nanny crisis that couldn't be solved with money or delegation. But in the corporate world, even 3 absences were enough to make investors nervous when you were a single mother running a billion-dollar company. She glanced toward the nursery, where soft sounds of contentment drifted through the baby monitor, actual contentment, not the eerie silence that usually meant the triplets were plotting their next assault on whatever caregiver had dared to enter their domain. Missus Henderson had stayed through the night, marveling at the continued peace that had somehow persisted even after Marcus's departure. "It's like they're different babies," she had whispered to Victoria around dawn. Like someone flipped a switch. But switches could be flipped back. Victoria had learned not to trust temporary solutions. Her phone rang. Amanda Chen, no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname, though Victoria found herself wondering about the coincidence. "Victoria! Thank God! Where are you?" The conference room is filling up, and Peterson from Goldman Sachs is asking about succession planning. Again. Succession planning. Code 4. What happens to Blackwood Industries when the unstable single mother finally cracks under pressure? "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Victoria said, already reaching for her blazer. "Should I have them start without you?" "Absolutely not." The words came out sharper than intended. "And Amanda? Make sure everyone knows I'm handling a family matter. Not a crisis. A matter." She hung up and looked toward the nursery one more time. The babies were awake but quiet, playing with the soft toys Marcus had somehow convinced them to engage with during his brief visit. 3 perfect little people who had managed to terrorize an entire industry of childcare professionals, calmed by a night shift custodian who understood something all her expensive experts had missed. Victoria grabbed her keys and headed for the door, pushing down the guilt that threatened to surface. One more meeting. One more day of keeping her empire intact. Then she would figure out what Marcus had done and how to replicate it. She just hoped her babies would forgive her for leaving them again. 23 floors below Victoria's crisis, Marcus Chen was discovering that word traveled fast, in a building where everyone knew everyone else's business. He sat in the basement break room, sharing coffee and quiet conversation with Elena Rodriguez, the day shift supervisor who had become something like a protective older sister in the 2 years he'd been working at Blackwood Industries. "So, let me get this straight," Elena said, stirring sugar into her coffee with the deliberate motions of someone who had heard plenty of unbelievable stories in her time. "The Ice Queen upstairs?" "Don't call her that," Marcus interrupted quietly. Elena raised an eyebrow. "The very successful, very intimidating billionaire upstairs asked you to help with her kids? At 3 in the morning? She didn't ask. I offered." "Even worse." Elena shook her head. "Marcus, honey, you know how this looks, right? Single guy, single mom, middle-of-the-night house calls?" Marcus had been dreading this conversation, but he knew Elena meant well. She had been the one to help him get the custodial job when he was desperate for work that would let him care for Lily during the day. She had covered for him when Lily was sick, and he couldn't find childcare. She was family in all the ways that mattered. "It's not like that," he said. "Those babies, Elena, they've been through 17 nannies. 17. And last night, they calmed down when I was there. Because you're good with kids. We all know that. But Marcus, she's not just any mother. She's Victoria Blackwood, And you're a custodian, Marcus finished. I know exactly what I am. Elena winced. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did, and you're not wrong. Marcus took a sip of coffee, grateful for the bitter warmth. But those babies don't care about net worth or social status. They care about someone showing up for them, really showing up. Marcus paused, remembering Victoria's face last night. The exhaustion, the desperate hope, the way she had looked at her children like they were a puzzle she couldn't solve. I think their mother is drowning, he said finally. And I think she's so focused on not going under that she can't see her kids are drowning too. Elena studied him with the sharp eyes of a woman who had raised 4 children of her own. You sure you're not projecting? The question hit harder than it should have. Marcus set down his coffee cup and looked at his hands calloused from cleaning, scarred from the construction work he'd done before Lily was born. Steady, despite the tremor that sometimes came with exhaustion. Maybe, he admitted. When Sarah died, when it was just me and Lily, I made a lot of mistakes trying to figure out how to be everything she needed. Maybe I see that same panic in Victoria. Sarah was sick for months before she passed, Elena said gently. You had time to prepare, as much as anyone can. This woman, her husband died in an accident, right? Sudden? Marcus nodded. He had looked up the story after leaving the penthouse, not out of curiosity, but out of concern. Jonathan Blackwood, concert pianist turned stay-at-home father, had died in a car accident when the triplets were 4 months old. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. 4 months old, Elena continued. That's right, when she would have been thinking about returning to work anyway. Then suddenly, she's a single mother of 3, running a company, no partner to help, and everyone expecting her to handle it perfectly because she's rich, Marcus added, because money should be able to solve everything. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the break room filled with the distant hum of building machinery and the occasional footstep from the floors above. So what are you going to do? Elena asked. What do you mean? Marcus! Elena's voice carried the patient tone she used when her teenagers were being deliberately obtuse. A billionaire just discovered you have a magic touch with her impossible children. You think this is going to end with a thank you note? Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Amanda, Mrs. Blackwood's assistant. Mrs. Blackwood would like to speak with you today if possible. Could you call the office number below when convenient? Marcus showed the message to Elena, who whistled low. And there it is, she said. The question is, are you ready for whatever comes next? Marcus thought about Lily. Asleep in their small apartment, cared for by Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor, who watched her during his work hours. He thought about the stack of bills on his kitchen table, the student loan payments from the education degree he'd never been able to use, the constant low-level anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck. But mostly, he thought about 3 babies who had looked at him with such trust, such immediate acceptance, that it had nearly broken his heart. I guess I'm about to find out, he said, and dialed the number. The 42nd floor of Blackwood Industries housed the executive offices, a realm of marble and mahogany that Marcus had cleaned countless times, but never truly occupied. Walking through it during business hours, surrounded by people in $1,000 suits discussing million-dollar deals, felt like entering a parallel universe. Amanda Chen, still no relation, despite her amused smile when Marcus introduced himself, led him through a maze of glass-walled conference rooms and corner offices toward the door marked Victoria Blackwood, CEO. She's just finishing with the board, Amanda explained, her voice carrying the kind of efficiency that came from managing impossible schedules for demanding executives. Number 2. Fair warning, it didn't go well. The investors are concerned about recent disruptions. Through the conference room glass, Marcus could see Victoria at the head of a long table, surrounded by men in identical navy suits. Her posture was perfect, her voice steady, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the presentation remote just a little too tightly. Assure you that any personal matters are being handled with the discretion and professionalism this company is known for, she was saying. Blackwood Industries remains on track for record quarterly earnings. Of course, Victoria, replied an older man, whose voice carried the particular arrogance of someone who had never doubted his own importance. But stability is key to investor confidence. Single parenthood, especially with challenging children. It raises questions about long-term leadership capacity. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He had heard this tone before, usually directed at Lily's mother during the months before Sarah's death, when people spoke about terminal illness as if it were a character flaw rather than a tragedy. Victoria's smile never wavered, but Marcus caught the flash of something dangerous in her eyes. I appreciate your concern, Robert. I'm sure, if you had faced similar challenges, you would have handled them with equal grace. Of course, that's hypothetical, since your ex-wife handled all child-rearing responsibilities even before your divorce. The conference room went very quiet. The meeting is adjourned, Victoria continued smoothly. Amanda will send out quarterly projections by end of day. Thank you all for coming. The board members filed out in various states of discomfort, most avoiding eye contact with Marcus as they passed. Robert Peterson from Goldman Sachs paused just long enough to give Marcus the kind of look that suggested custodians shouldn't be loitering on executive floors. Mr. Chen? Victoria appeared in the doorway, looking every inch the corporate warrior, despite the exhaustion Marcus could see around her eyes. Thank you for coming. Would you like some coffee? I'm fine. Thank you. She led him into her office, a space that managed to be both intimidating and oddly impersonal. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Manhattan, but the room itself felt more like a very expensive hotel suite than a place where someone actually spent their time. Victoria closed the door and seemed to deflate slightly, the corporate armor slipping just enough to reveal the worried mother underneath. How are the babies today? Marcus asked. Still peaceful. Mrs. Henderson said they slept through the night for the first time in months. They're eating properly, playing with their toys, being— She paused. Being normal babies. That's good. But you left, Victoria continued, settling into the chair across from him rather than behind her imposing desk. You weren't there this morning, and they're still calm. Which means either whatever you did has some kind of lasting effect, or they're waiting for you to come home? Marcus finished. Victoria's expression shifted, surprise, mixing with something that might have been hope. What do you mean? Marcus leaned forward slightly, choosing his words carefully. Mrs. Blackwood, Victoria. Please. Victoria, what I saw last night. Those babies weren't trying to torture their nannies. They were conducting job interviews. Job interviews? Think about it. 17 nannies, all with perfect credentials, all treating this as just another job. Someone to feed them, change them, keep them safe while you work. But babies don't want employees. They want family. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on something beyond the window. Their father, she said finally, Jonathan used to say that babies are tiny scientists, always testing hypotheses about how the world works. Smart man. He was going to be the stay-at-home parent. We had it all planned out. I would keep building the company. He would focus on raising them. perfect division of labor. Her voice caught slightly. He was so excited about teaching them piano, about being the kind of father who knew all their friends' names and helped with homework. And, when he died, you had to be both parents, Marcus said gently. I tried, but I'm not. I'm not good at the soft parts. The comfort, the patience, the just sitting with them without an agenda. I'm good at solving problems, but they aren't problems to be solved. No, they're not. But they are challenges to be met. And you've been meeting impossible challenges your whole life. Victoria looked at him sharply. You researched me. A little. After last night, I wanted to understand what we were dealing with. Self-made billionaire, built an empire from bankruptcy. Overcame significant obstacles. Marcus paused. But none of that history mentioned the most impressive thing about you. Which is? You kept trying. 17 nannies? And you kept trying. A lot of people would have given up. Found some boarding school or relative to take over. But you kept fighting for them. I didn't feel like I was fighting for them. I felt like I was failing them. Sometimes, those are the same thing. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of honesty settling between them like something solid and fragile at once. What you said last night, Victoria said finally, about presence versus perfection. How do I learn that? How do I turn off the part of my brain that's always thinking about the next meeting, the next crisis, the next decision that could make or break everything? Marcus smiled, remembering similar conversations with Sarah during Lily's first months, when every cry had felt like a personal failure and every peaceful moment like a temporary reprieve. You start small. 5 minutes of just watching them breathe, 10 minutes of sitting on the floor while they play, not trying to teach them anything or accomplish anything, just existing in the same space. And, if they start crying, not trying to fix it immediately, just acknowledging that they're having big feelings and you're there with them. Victoria looked skeptical. That's it? That's your revolutionary childcare philosophy? That's it. Revolutionary presence in a world that teaches us to always be somewhere else mentally. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. I have another board meeting in an hour, Victoria said, glancing at her phone. But, tonight, would you consider coming by again? Not as an employee. Not because I'm paying you, but because, she struggled with the words, because you want to learn, Marcus finished. Because I want to be the mother they deserve. And I think you might be able to help me figure out how. Marcus thought about Lily, about the way she had adapted to their strange schedule of day sleeping and night working, about the sacrifices they had both made to build a life together after Sarah's death. I can come by after I pick up my daughter from daycare. Would it be okay if I brought her? She's 2, very gentle with babies. Victoria's expression brightened with genuine interest. You have a daughter? Lily. She's the reason I know anything about children at all. I'd love to meet her. The babies. They haven't been around other children much. I wasn't sure they were ready. Kids are usually better teachers than adults when it comes to how to just be present with each other. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt, and Marcus caught a glimpse of the woman she might have been in a different life. Less armored, more open to uncertainty. Marcus, she said, as he reached for the door handle, why are you doing this? Helping me, I mean. You don't know me. You certainly don't owe me anything. Marcus paused, thinking of all the true answers he could give, because he recognized the look of a parent drowning in responsibility. Because he had been helped when he needed it most, by neighbors and co-workers who saw past his circumstances to his heart. Because sometimes the universe placed you exactly where you needed to be to help someone else find their way. Because everyone deserves to be seen, he said finally. Really, seen. Your babies need that from you. But you need it too. And maybe we all need to remember that family isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when you don't know what you're doing. Victoria's smile was small, but real. 7 o'clock tonight? 7 o'clock. As Marcus left the executive floor and returned to the familiar territory of service corridors and utility rooms, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just committed to something much larger than helping a billionaire with her childcare problems. He was helping a family find its way back to each other. And in the process, he might just find something he hadn't even realized he was missing. A sense of purpose beyond survival, beyond just getting through each day. But first, he had to figure out how to explain to Lily that they were going to visit 3 babies who lived in a castle in the sky, and that her daddy was about to become part of a story he couldn't have imagined just 24 hours ago. Elena was waiting for him when he returned to the break room, her expression somewhere between concerned and amused. "Well?" she asked. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "I just agreed to help save a family. And what did you get in return?" I think," Marcus thought about Victoria's smile, about the hope in her voice when she spoke about learning to be present with her children, about the possibility of helping 3 babies find their way back to their mother. "A chance to remember why I love being a father," he said. Elena nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "Just be careful, Marcus. The rich and the poor, we don't usually mix well. Different rules, different consequences." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But babies don't know about different rules. They just know about love and presence, and whether someone shows up when they need them." "And you think that's enough?" Marcus smiled, already thinking about the evening ahead, about introducing Lily to 3 babies who needed to remember how to trust, about helping a brilliant woman learn that intelligence and instinct weren't always the same thing. "I guess we're going to find out." 7 o'clock arrived with the kind of autumn evening that made Manhattan look like a movie. Set golden light filtering through tall buildings, the first hint of winter sharpness in the air. Marcus stood outside Victoria's building, with Lily's small hand in his, both of them staring up at the glass tower that seemed to stretch into the darkening sky. "Daddy, are the babies really up there?" Lily asked, her voice filled with the kind of wonder that only 2-year-olds could muster when faced with something beyond their understanding. "They are, sweetheart, way up there. Are they sad babies?" Marcus knelt down to his daughter's level, adjusting her small pink jacket. "They were sad, yes, but I think they're starting to feel better." "Because you sang to them?" "Because someone finally listened to what they were trying to say." Lily nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense to her. In her world, being heard was the most natural thing imaginable. She had never known what it felt like to cry and have no one come, to need comfort, and find only efficiency. The elevator ride to the penthouse seemed longer this time, weighted with Marcus's awareness that tonight would be different. Last night had been crisis management. Tonight was intentional, a choice Victoria was making to prioritize her children over the endless demands of her corporate empire. The elevator doors opened directly into the foyer, where Victoria waited, still in her business attire, but with her shoes kicked off, and her perfectly styled hair slightly mussed. She looked more human somehow, less like the untouchable CEO, and more like what she was, a tired mother, hoping for guidance. "You must be Lily," Victoria said, crouching down with the careful movements of someone unaccustomed to interacting with small children. Lily pressed closer to Marcus's leg. suddenly shy in the face of such elegant attention. She's usually more outgoing. Marcus apologized, but Victoria shook her head. She's being appropriately cautious. That's smart. Victoria looked at Lily seriously, the same way she might address a board member. Would you like to meet my babies? They've been waiting for you. Something in Victoria's tone, respectful rather than condescending, seemed to reach Lily. She nodded and stepped slightly away from Marcus's protective shadow. The sound that greeted them in the main living area was something Marcus had never heard before. The gentle chaos of contented babies. Mason was on his stomach, pushing a soft toy car back and forth while making surprisingly accurate motor sounds. Riley was sitting up, carefully stacking blocks with the focused concentration of an engineer. Sage was lying on his back, babbling to a mobile that spun lazy circles above his head. Normal baby sounds. Happy baby sounds. Oh, Lily breathed, her shyness evaporating instantly. They're so little. She looked up at Marcus for permission. And when he nodded, she walked carefully toward Riley's play area and sat down cross-legged on the soft carpet. Hi, baby, she said in the gentle voice she used with injured animals and broken toys. I'm Lily. Do you want to play blocks? Riley looked up from her construction project, studying this new person with solemn blue eyes. Then, to everyone's amazement, she offered Lily one of her blocks. She never. Victoria started, then stopped. She doesn't usually share. Kids know other kids, Marcus said softly. Different language, same wavelength. Victoria settled onto the couch, watching as Lily showed Riley how to make the blocks into a tower, then how to knock them down with appropriate dramatic flair. Mason abandoned his toy car and crawled over to investigate, while Sage continued his conversation with the mobile, occasionally glancing over at the entertainment. How was the rest of your day? Marcus asked, sitting beside Victoria, but maintaining careful distance. Challenging. Victoria's voice carried the weight of unspoken complications. Word travels fast in corporate circles. 3 board members called to check in after the meeting this morning. My assistant fielded 6 calls from business reporters asking about recent changes in leadership availability. They're vultures. They're business people. And they smell weakness. Victoria's smile was rueful. A CEO who rushes out of meetings for childcare emergencies, who can't maintain consistent availability. It raises questions about stability. Marcus watched Lily teaching Mason how to clap his hands together. Her patient encouragement met with delighted baby laughter. What kind of questions? Whether I can handle the demands of running a billion-dollar company while raising 3 children alone? Whether the board should consider interim leadership? Whether Blackwood Industries needs a CEO who puts family first? The bitter irony. Her voice was unmistakable. They want you to choose. They've always wanted me to choose. When I was pregnant, when Jonathan died, every time I've had to put my children's needs first. But until now, I thought I could have both. I thought I was proving that women could be devoted mothers and successful executives simultaneously. And now? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, watching as Riley carefully handed Lily another block. Her small face serious with concentration. Now I think I was trying to be 2 different people instead of figuring out how to be one whole person who happens to be both a mother and a CEO. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. Then another. Then a call from an unknown number that he instinctively declined. Marcus? Victoria noticed his expression change. What's wrong? He looked at the latest text, his stomach sinking as he read words that seemed designed to destroy everything that was beginning to build between them. I think, he said carefully, we may have a problem. The problem had a name: Evelyn Whitmore, Victoria's former business partner and current rival, who had built her own empire on the ashes of their dissolved partnership 5 years earlier. The woman who had never forgiven Victoria for choosing family over their shared ambition, who had watched Victoria's recent struggles with the satisfaction of someone witnessing a predicted downfall. The text messages were from reporters. 3 different business publications, all asking for Marcus's comment on his relationship with Victoria Blackwood, all referencing information that could only have come from someone with inside knowledge of Victoria's recent nanny troubles and her unusual solution. "How did they get your number?" Victoria asked, her face pale as she read the messages over Marcus's shoulder. "That's not the important question," Marcus replied grimly. "The important question is who told them to call me in the first place." Victoria's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID, and her expression hardened. "Evelyn." "Don't answer it." But Victoria was already swiping to accept the call, her corporate armor snapping back into place with frightening efficiency. "Hello, Evelyn?" The voice that came through the speaker was smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "Victoria, darling, I just heard the most fascinating rumor about your creative approach to childcare." "A janitor? Really? How?" "Unconventional." Marcus felt his chest tighten. Across the room, Lily was helping Sage stack soft toys, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around her. "What do you want, Evelyn?" "What I've always wanted. What's best for business? And right now, what's best for business is clarity about Blackwood Industries' leadership stability. Get to the point. The board is meeting tomorrow morning. Emergency session. Some concerns have been raised about your recent lifestyle choices. Sleeping? With the help? Victoria? It looks desperate." "I'm not," Victoria started, then caught herself. "My personal life is not up for discussion." "Of course it is. You're a public figure running a public company. Every choice you make reflects on Blackwood Industries' reputation and stability." Marcus could see Victoria's knuckles white where she gripped the phone. He wanted to take it from her, to end this conversation before it could do more damage. But he knew that would only make things worse. "What are you proposing?" Victoria asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Step down voluntarily. Take time to get your house in order, literally and figuratively. The board will appoint an interim CEO, someone stable. Someone without the distraction of impossible children and inappropriate relationships. You can focus on being a mother, which is clearly what you need to do. And let you swoop in and acquire Blackwood Industries for a fraction of its value? I don't think so. This isn't about me, Victoria. This is about what's best for the company. For the employees. For the shareholders who trusted you to put their interests first." Victoria looked at Marcus, then at her children, playing peacefully in a scene that had seemed impossible just days earlier. "I need to think about it. You have until 9 tomorrow morning. The board meeting is scheduled for 9:30. The call ended, leaving a silence that seemed to echo with threats and ultimatums. "She's right," Victoria said finally, her voice hollow. "About the perception. About the board's concerns. A single mother who can't handle her children without help from—" She gestured helplessly at Marcus. "Without help from a custodian," Marcus finished. "Someone beneath your social station." "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" Marcus stood, gently extracting Lily from her careful baby supervision. "Come on, sweetheart. We need to go." "But, Daddy, I'm teaching Riley how to—" "I know, baby, but it's time to leave." Victoria stood too, panic flickering across her features. "Marcus, wait! Please! I didn't mean—" You meant exactly what you said. Marcus's voice was calm, but Victoria could hear the hurt underneath. And maybe you're right. Maybe this was a mistake from the beginning. The babies need you. You need to decide what you're willing to lose, to keep what you think you want. Marcus picked up Lily and Esther, who looked back at the babies with the kind of heartbreak that only children could express so purely. Marcus looked at Victoria, standing in her perfect penthouse, surrounded by all the markers of her success, and felt the familiar weight of class differences that no amount of good intention could bridge. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said honestly. They left without another word. The elevator carrying them down from the heights of wealth and privilege to the ground level, where ordinary people dealt with ordinary problems in ordinary ways. But behind them, 3 babies, who had been learning to trust again, began to cry. The emergency board meeting convened at 9:30 sharp in the glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor. Victoria sat at the head of the table, impeccably dressed and perfectly composed, facing 12 men and women who held the power to end everything she had built. She had spent the night preparing not just her presentation, but her heart. The choice Evelyn had forced her to make had clarified something that months of struggle had obscured. What mattered most wasn't what she might lose, but what she refused to lose. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, standing with the confidence that had carried her through hostile takeovers and impossible negotiations. "I understand there are concerns about my leadership and the stability of Blackwood Industries." Robert Peterson leaned forward, his expression smug. "Victoria, we appreciate you calling this meeting. It shows you understand the gravity of the situation." "I do understand, which is why I want to address the elephant in the room directly." She clicked a remote, and the wall screen displayed a simple slide: "The future of Blackwood Industries." "You're concerned that my responsibilities as a mother are compromising my effectiveness as a CEO. You're concerned that my personal choices reflect poorly on the company's image. You're concerned that I can't balance family and business success." Nods around the table. This was going exactly as expected. "You're right," Victoria continued. "I can't balance them. Not the way I've been trying to." More nods, some satisfied smiles. Peterson was already reaching for his phone, probably to text Evelyn with the good news. "Which is why I'm restructuring my approach, effective immediately." The nods stopped. Victoria clicked to the next slide. "New leadership structure. I'm implementing a modified leadership model. I will remain CEO, with full decision-making authority over strategic direction, major acquisitions, and long-term planning. Day-to-day operational management will be handled by a team of divisional directors reporting directly to me." "Victoria," Peterson interrupted. This sounds like a CEO who has figured out how to delegate effectively while maintaining strategic control, something that, I believe, is considered a mark of excellent leadership in most business schools." She clicked to the next slide. "Schedule restructuring. I will be available for meetings, calls, and strategic decisions Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Friday mornings. Emergency decisions will be handled via secure communication channels. All other times are reserved for family." "You can't run a billion-dollar company part-time," Peterson sputtered. "I'm not proposing part-time leadership. I'm proposing focused leadership. 45 hours a week of concentrated, strategic attention instead of 60 hours of scattered, reactive management." Around the table, expressions were shifting from satisfaction to confusion to something that might have been respect. Victoria continued, "I'll be implementing this model company-wide. All Blackwood Industries executives will be expected to maintain clear boundaries between work and personal time. to delegate effectively, and to model healthy work-life integration for their teams. She clicked to the final slide. Results-driven leadership. Judge me on results, not on how many hours I spend in this building. Judge me on quarterly earnings, successful project completion, and strategic growth. Judge me on leading a company that values both excellence and humanity. And if your personal situation continues to create distractions, this came from Margaret Hughes, the only other woman on the board. Though her tone suggested no sisterly solidarity, Victoria smiled, and for the first time in months, it was completely genuine. My personal situation is under control. I've learned to prioritize presence over perfection, strategic thinking over reactive crisis management. I've learned that good leadership isn't about being available every moment. It's about making the right decisions when they matter most. The room was quiet for a long moment. I assume you have specific plans for implementing this. Restructuring? 1. Scree design, Peterson asked, though his tone had lost much of its earlier confidence. I do, and I assume you have specific alternatives to propose if you find this plan inadequate? More silence, because the truth was, Victoria Blackwood had built Blackwood Industries from nothing. She had generated more profit in 5 years than many companies saw in decades. Her leadership had made them all very wealthy. We'll need to see detailed implementation plans, Margaret said finally. You'll have them by end of business today, and guarantees that this experiment won't compromise company performance? Victoria looked around the table at faces that had watched her climb from bankruptcy to billions, had profited from her vision and determination, and were now questioning whether she could continue to lead because she dared to prioritize her children's well-being. The only guarantee I can give you, she said, is the same one I've always given. I will do whatever it takes to ensure Blackwood Industries continues to thrive. The difference is that now I know what whatever it takes actually means. She gathered her materials, stood, and walked toward the door. Victoria? Peterson called after her. This isn't over. She turned back, and her smile was sharper than any knife Evelyn Whitmore could have wielded. You're absolutely right, Robert. It's just beginning. Marcus was in the basement break room, mechanically eating a sandwich he couldn't taste, when Elena found him. You look like hell, she announced, settling into the chair across from him with the coffee she claimed was the only thing keeping her sane during day shifts. Thanks. Always nice to hear. Want to talk about it? Marcus looked at his friend, really looked at her. Elena Rodriguez had raised 4 children while working full-time, had survived a divorce that left her financially devastated, had clawed her way up from entry-level cleaning to building supervisor through sheer determination and competence. How do you do it? He asked. How do you exist in their world without losing yourself in it? Elena raised an eyebrow. We talking about the rich folks upstairs, or something more specific? Victoria offered me a job yesterday. Not just helping with the babies, but a real position. Childcare coordinator, or something like that. Good money, regular hours, benefits. And her business partner, former partner, found out about me helping with her kids. Made it sound like something inappropriate. Put Victoria in a position where she had to choose between protecting her company and protecting you. Elena finished. And she chose the company. She chose survival. I can't blame her for that. Elena was quiet for a moment, studying his face with the careful attention of someone who had learned to read people's unspoken troubles. You know what I think? She said finally. I'm afraid to ask. I think you're in love with her. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. Elena. That's not the romantic kind, she continued calmly. Though maybe that too, eventually. But you're in love with the idea of her, the possibility of her, the family. You could all be together. Marcus set down his sandwich, appetite completely gone. Maybe. And I think she's in love with the idea of you, too. The possibility of a different kind of life, one where being a good mother and a successful person aren't mutually exclusive. But, ideas aren't the same as reality, and reality is that you live in different worlds, with different rules and different consequences. So you think I should stay away? Elena smiled, the expression both sad and proud. I think you should decide what you're fighting for. Because make no mistake, Marcus, this is a fight. Not just for those babies, but for the right of ordinary people to matter to extraordinary people. For the right of families to exist across class lines. For the right of love to be more important than social expectations. And if I lose, then you lose. But at least you'll know you fought for something worth fighting for. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but he recognized the tone immediately. Mr. Chen, this is Victoria. Could we meet? I have something important to discuss. The coffee shop where we first met? 1 hour? Marcus showed the message to Elena, who read it with the expression of someone watching a poker hand reach its final reveal. Well, she said, looks like the fight's not over yet. The Harbor Cafe looked exactly the same as it had the night Victoria first walked in, with 3 crying babies and a broken heart. The same warm lighting, the same mismatched chairs, the same sense of being a haven for people who needed somewhere to think. Victoria was already there when Marcus arrived, sitting in the corner booth where she had first discovered that her impossible children could be calmed by someone who saw them as people rather than problems. She looked different, still perfectly put together, but somehow more solid, more present, like someone who had made a decision and was prepared to live with its consequences. How did the board meeting go? Marcus asked, sliding into the seat across from her. Better than expected. They accepted my proposal for restructured leadership. Congratulations. Victoria smiled, but it was complicated relief, mixed with something that might have been loss. I quit trying to be 2 different people. Turns out I can be one whole person who happens to be both a mother and a CEO. That's good. That's really good. Marcus. Victoria leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table between them. I want to apologize for yesterday, for the way I reacted, for what I implied about your place in our lives. You don't need to apologize for protecting yourself. Yes, I do, because protection based on fear isn't really protection at all. It's just another kind of prison. Marcus waited, sensing there was more. I want to offer you that job. Again. Not because I need help with the babies, though I do, but because you've shown me something important about what family can look like when we stop worrying about what other people think. Victoria. The salary is $100,000 a year, plus benefits, plus tuition assistance for any education you want to pursue. Part-time schedule that works around Lily's needs. Official title, Family Integration Specialist. Marcus stared at her. Family Integration Specialist? You help families figure out how to be present with each other. Starting with mine, but I'm thinking it could be something bigger. A program. Maybe. For other parents who are struggling to balance ambition with connection. The offer hung between them, like a bridge, spanning 2 different worlds. What about Evelyn? What about the perception issues? Victoria's smile turned fierce. Evelyn can go to hell. And anyone who has a problem with my choices is welcome to take their concerns and their investments elsewhere. You'd really risk your company for this? I'd risk my company for my family. And Marcus, you and Lily, you're family now. If you want to be, Marcus thought about Lily asking if she'd see the babies again. He thought about 3 impossible children who had learned to trust because someone finally understood their language. He thought about Victoria, learning to choose presence over perfection, connection over control. "Yes," he said simply. Victoria's face lit up with pure joy. "Yes, yes, I want to be family. Yes, I'll take the job. Yes, I think we can build something beautiful together. Even if it's complicated, even if people talk." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand, marveling at how right it felt despite all the reasons it should have been impossible. "Especially then, even rated 5, he said. "The best families are always a little complicated." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the nursery-turned-playroom of Victoria's penthouse, watching Lily teach the triplets how to build a tower tall enough for all of them to knock down together. The chaos was extraordinary and perfect. 4 children laughing, blocks flying, the kind of joyful destruction that meant everyone was exactly where they belonged. Victoria appeared in the doorway, still in her business clothes, but with Mason on her hip, having just returned from a board meeting that ended precisely at 6 p.m. "How was your day?" she asked. The same question she asked every evening, though now it carried the weight of genuine interest rather than guilty obligation. Lily taught Riley how to sing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," Marcus reported. Sage figured out how to open the child safety locks on the kitchen cabinets. And Mason. He gestured to the baby in her arms, who was contentedly chewing on Victoria's pearl necklace. Mason discovered that expensive jewelry makes excellent teething toys. Victoria laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. "Good thing those are fake pearls." "Are they really?" "No. But they're just things. And things can be replaced. This." She gestured at the beautiful chaos surrounding them. "This is irreplaceable." Marcus moved closer, wrapping his arms around both Victoria and Mason, breathing in the scent of her perfume mixed with baby shampoo and the indefinable essence of home. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. Victoria looked around the room at Lily, patiently helping Sage stack blocks, at Riley, clapping her hands in delight at her own architectural achievements, at the toys scattered across expensive furniture and the finger smudges on floor-to-ceiling windows that used to be kept pristine. "Only one," she said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I regret that it took me so long to understand that the most important meetings are the ones that happen on the floor at 7 p.m. with people who think you're perfect just because you showed up. Outside the windows, Manhattan glittered like a field of possibilities. Inside the penthouse, a family that had been built from broken pieces and second chances settled into the evening routine that had become their anchor. Later, after the children were asleep and the adults had finally found a moment to breathe, Victoria and Marcus sat together on the couch where they had first begun to understand each other. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing us, for staying, for teaching me that love isn't something you have to earn or achieve. It's something you practice." Marcus smiled, thinking of all the moments that had led them here: crisis and connection, doubt and decision, the slow work of building trust across impossible differences. "Thank you," he replied, "for teaching me that family isn't about being the same, it's about choosing each other, again and again, until choosing becomes as natural as breathing." In the nursery, when heaven and a children, soft baby sounds mixed with Lily's gentle whispers as she told bedtime stories to 3 little people who had learned that being difficult wasn't the same as being broken, and that sometimes the most extraordinary love came from the most ordinary places. And in a world that insisted on dividing people into categories of worth and status, they had built something revolutionary, a family based on presence rather than perfection, connection rather than control, the radical idea that love could bridge any divide if people were brave enough to meet each other where they really lived. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.